Created live on Fireside.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another YNS Live with NFL Thread with our guest, Jennifer Archuleta. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We are good. Cynthia and I are really excited. We know we're going to give everyone a little background where you were at the Thread event. You were also a model on at the fashion show for the Off the Field, which was amazing. You had such a gorgeous dress. And then you and Adam, your husband, walked down the platform. And I know Cynthia and I were excited when you reached out because we're going to really get into the charity Childhelp that you're a part of. But we would love for you to give us a little background about you, where you grew up a little bit. And then we're going to kind of get into the journey with you and Adam, your husband that has been in the NFL, who now is on CBS. And so we would love for you to get into a little bit about like you growing up, a little bit about who you are, siblings, and all that. And I see your dogs, which I know we're going to get into because I'm a huge dog lover.
Yes. Well, I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. It was a very small town. Really hardworking, good people. There weren't a lot of fancy things growing up. I had a great childhood, but it was very, it's tough sometimes. I went to a really tough high school growing up. If you ever saw the movie Dangerous Minds, I'm probably going to age myself, but that's the kind of high school I went to. It was, a lot of fights. It was not a lot of learning. It was just a lot of just getting through the days. And so I hated school. I hated going to school. I got in many fights. People always look at me like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you used to fight. But I had to. And then, I started working at 12 years old and I started busting tables. I was always really hungry and I always had good work ethics. And I even sold vacuums door to door. I mean, I was just always looking for something to make a quick buck. And many times I have two smaller brothers and I have a sister. So they're a lot younger than me. And so when I did work, I would buy them things that maybe my mom couldn't. So I always had a huge heart and I always was doing for others. I became a candy striper at 12 years old too, which I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but sorry, I got something in my eye.
No worries.
It's basically I would volunteer at the hospital and I would bring flowers to people. Oh my gosh, sorry.
Yeah, no, fix your eye because I got some questions there because I know, Cynthia and I can go back. I know you said you aged yourself, but I feel like we're kind of all in the same age there. And I think it's important for people to hear that you always wanted to work. You always wanted to, to bring in. Where do you think that kind of came from? Was it your upbringing where you just knew that you wanted to, provide? Or do you think it was something that was just really innate in you?
Well, I think when you don't have a lot, you don't know what you're missing. But for some reason, I always wanted more and I always wanted to do more for other people. So I don't really know where that came about because like I said, the school I went to, nobody had money and it was just, like I said, everybody was just trying to survive. So I don't know where that came from, but I always was I want to buy a waterbed. Half my family has blue eyes because they're Irish Polish. I wanted color contacts, all that stuff. I mean, it's silly, but it costs money. And and I wanted to buy my own car. I wanted this beautiful prom dress. So those were the things that I'm like, you know what, if I want those things, I gotta try to find a way to, get it.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's really understandable. And I think I grew up with five. And, we grew up in a town that was a wealthy town, but my parents were divorced and my mom was the school teacher. And when we did fine and never thought anything of it, but same, as a young kid, I always worked. I always babysat. I always brought things in because I knew that if I didn't want to put the pressure on my parents, really. I didn't want to put the pressure and make them feel. So I kind of went out there and did that. So at 12, you were a candy striper. And now, did your siblings, I know they were a lot younger, but did they also have that same worth ethic that you did?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I was working and donating my time. I mean, that's probably why I didn't do very well in school. So I also worked at my grandmother's church. I like to help her, on bingo nights, and I'd pass out the chips and, the drinks. And I don't know. I just was really always hungry. I was always really busy, and I was always trying to do everything and anything. I took ballet, I took tap, I took jazz. I was a cheerleader. I tried track. So I was just like a busybody, and I just wanted to do it all. But the candy striper for me, it was just like giving back and just making people happy. That was another thing in my life that I always loved doing at a very, very young age. If there was the ugly dog with one leg, I wanted him before the one that everybody went off after that was purebred. If there was a dirty doll on the shelf that had been sitting in Kmart at the time, I wanted that doll as opposed to the one that was boxed. I was always trying to save anything and everything from a young age.
I love that. I love that.
Thank you.
Jennifer, I want to tell you that a couple of things resonate. First of all, um, as a founder of Thread, being at the Super Bowl event, I was so excited that you came to the Thread event and that everybody got to meet you and that you got to, introduce your story to a lot of the people that were attending. The whole purpose of like what we do is to introduce NFL women to an audience that has no idea what NFL women are really all about. And your conversation, the beginning of it today, it's a testament to that. And it's funny because I'm a Pittsburgh girl, but I married a Youngstown boy.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and we discussed it throughout his entire playing career. Where are we going to raise our children? And we decided to raise them in Youngstown, right outside of Youngstown, because he wanted our children to have that worth ethic. And I say worth ethic because it's something that Juliet says accidentally all the time, and we laugh about it. But it really, when you have that work ethic and you're raised in that environment to work and to be hungry and to have the values, it does create worth. And I think that so I'm really excited to continue talking to you today about this because I think that seeing my own children grow up in that environment, I see them working hard and I see the values in them. And I'm sure it's something you cherish, the fact that you were raised in that environment.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean I don't even know like how to teach my kids that. I sometimes I feel like it's just part of them because I feel like we're all kind of pre-programmed to some extent. But yeah, it's like it's not something that can be taught. So that's amazing that you did that. And I probably know your husband since we're all around the same age. And but my husband was just like, he could never deal with cold weather. So he likes warm environments. He's from Green River, Wyoming. So he's just like, there's no way.
Right. I can appreciate. Well, the only reason that you really do that is because of family and
Yeah.
community. Nobody would really say, let's transplant our family, to, a cold part of the world and, like a small town. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And
No,
we have
so
a
I'm,
big, oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. You have a big.
I mean, we have such a big family there too. Like we usually go back in June when it's warmer. And I mean, I have like 40 cousins that my kids like go and visit and see. And so everybody like it's pretty interesting. Not a lot of people in my family have left. So I was like one of the very few that left. So it's interesting.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Well, I'm glad you can go home and enjoy them. And I just think that has to mean a lot to your children too. And for you, for your kids to see where you're from and know your people like that, those summer trips are important.
Yeah. And just how we're so close considering there's so many of us. There really wasn't really any, I mean, there's been hardships throughout our lives, but like everybody is very close and we're all very supportive and good people.
It's beautiful.
I love that. And I know when Cynthia and I were doing a little research, she came across and was like, oh my gosh, another Ohio girl. And so I think that, it is where you grow up and kind of the world parts of where you grow up really does establish and lay the foundation of who you are. Like my husband grew up in the Bronx, very hardworking family. He had a job since he was 12. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. And even though we grew up in very different places, my mom was from the city. My mom was a New Yorker. And so she had those, those kind of things. And so we can teach our kids, even if we're bringing our kids up in a little bit of a different environment, maybe we have a little bit more than we had growing up, which I think is which is wonderful. So I would love to kind of dive into your next part. So you're, working as a young kid and you hated school. I totally hear you. I'm dyslexic. So school was like torture for me. I did play sports. So I did go to college and play sports in school, but the learning part of school was not fun for me. But, knowing that it was going to get me somewhere else with my athletics is why I kind of continued that. So where did your path lead as you left Ohio?
So when I left Ohio, like I said, I wasn't running from anything. I love my family. I remember my mom used to always watch like the news or something. She's like, "Oh my gosh, it's always sunny in California." And those kind of like small things always stick out to you as a kid, like just little like things here and there. And, I used to watch Baywatch growing up, those shows. And so I just remember, I was working 2 jobs at the time and in high school, and I was really proud of my job. I was like a manager at 579 at the time. I was also working at Papa John's. And so I had 2 really good jobs. I was doing really well, obviously financially, working 2 jobs. And I just kept thinking, like, there's got to be something better. There's got to be something bigger. I want the sunshine. I want the big city. I mean, I dated some really nice people throughout high school, but I didn't want to marry my high school sweetheart. And I didn't want to be in that small town. And so I started dating a Bearcat. He was a Cincinnati. And we started dating. And, my cousin had moved to California, who I was really close with. And I looked up to him. He was a little bit older than me. And this guy was his best friend. And he pretty much said, "We're moving to California." And I thought, oh, that sucks. I'll have this long distance relationship. And I didn't even know if I could get on an airplane and, go visit him and things like that. And then one day he said, "Why don't you come and visit me?" And I thought, oh my gosh, I hadn't even been on an airplane. And I was, 17, 18 at the time. So basically I went on an airplane and I visited him, and I was like, I'm gonna move here. And I went back home and I told everybody I was moving to Los Angeles. They thought I was absolutely crazy. I remember I quit my jobs. I had $500, and my dad said to me, "I don't want you to go," but I was 18, and I would pack my car with clothes. And I remember it was raining that day, and he would be taking piles of clothes out of my car. And all I really had was clothes because I was working retail. And so I had tons of clothes. And so basically, I packed my car. They had a going away party. Everybody brought, like, it was like almost like a graduation. Everybody brought envelopes, and I moved to California with $500. And I'll shorten the story because obviously there's a lot of things that probably happened. But I drove across country, and I had a purple Shadow convertible, Dodge Shadow. And I remember driving across country, and I hadn't seen some of the states. They were so beautiful. We vacationed, to Florida when I was growing up. And I think I went to Niagara Falls, New Jersey. But we didn't do too much traveling back then. And so I was just in awe of all these places. And I remember driving across country, and I was in Colorado, and we were going through the Rocky Mountains, and it was rain, it was snow, it was sunshine. And all of a sudden I remember they have these signs that say there's going to be falling rocks, possibly, be careful, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And this big rock boulder, I don't know what it was, like came crashing down, and I ran over it with my Dodge Shadow, and it literally ripped the bottom of my car, like from the bottom. And I was like Fred Flintstone trying to make it. And so very few people, like I said, of my family have moved away. I had an aunt and uncle who actually is my godmother, who lives in Colorado. I met up with them, and I spent $300 of my $500 fixing my car to make it to Los Angeles. And so then I finally fixed my car. I made it to Los Angeles, and I was in a 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood. It was off Orchid Drive. Janis Joplin, actually, they do these like really morbid tours, but she, I guess, died in front of my Hollywood apartment. All these hearses always go by, and they're like, "That's where so and so died," and "That's where so and so died."
Oh my gosh.
Janis Joplin had died in front of my
Wow.
my apartment, and I lived in a 1-bedroom. It was 4 people, and I knew 2 of them. And we would flip a coin, and whoever got heads would sleep on the mattress. And it was like really hard. I would eat sometimes crackers. I would go to McDonald's and I'd eat the filet o fish for like $1. And the struggle was real. And so, I was really like starving out there. And I remember my grandma, who I was very close with, she would often send me a box, and there was like food in there. And then I also had to go to like a payphone, and I would call my family because we didn't have cell phones in 1995. My mom sent me with one cell phone that like never worked, but I would oftentimes walk to Hollywood Boulevard and I'd call my family from a payphone, and that was communication or writing them.
Right. Wow.
So it was very lonely. It was hard.
Were they encouraging? Were they, you can do this, you're there, or were they like, come home? So did it make it even more difficult for you to stay?
I mean, I think I didn't show them the struggle. I think a lot like you just, you want them. I don't want my parents to worry, and I didn't want to put any burden on them, and it was my choice. And they always said, we can buy you a plane ticket home, but we can never go and help you financially make a life out there. And I knew that. And I knew that if I had probably moved to Cleveland or if I moved to New York, it would be easy to come back. But moving as far as I did, it was like I was going to survive this.
Right. Well, it also shows your hard work and your work ethic, because you're determined, this is what I want and this is how I'm going to do. So when you were in Los Angeles, what was your first job? Where did you start working and kind of laying your foundation?
So the production was really big out there, and so the roommates I had, they worked like art department, craft service. They were, they were production assistants and things like that. So it was kind of hard because it was all freelance. And so I got on some movie sets and I started to do freelance makeup, but it was inconsistent because sometimes you'd be on a movie for a couple of months and then sometimes you wouldn't work, which that was the beauty of LA too. You see all these people having lunch during the day and you're like, what the heck are they doing? How are they having lunch during the day? And it's pretty amazing. But, that was what I did. And so I did special effects. And the biggest movie I worked on that some people might know is Blade with Wesley Snipes. Mm-hmm. And I remember painting all these girls in blood, because that was the scene. Right. And I remember this one girl was like, I need lip gloss. I need this. And I'm kind of like, come on, people, like you're extras. Number 1, number 2, like you're painted in blood. It's like 2 seconds. Nobody's going to see your lip gloss. It was pretty obnoxious, to say the least, to be around these people. And I was just like getting kind of hardened by the industry because it wasn't what I was used to growing up with. It was just like everybody was very selfish and worried about themselves. And I wasn't really used to that. And, at that time too, I was still doing volunteer stuff. I was volunteering at the vet, helping them out, just like cleaning dogs' cages and things like that. And then I would work on the movie sets, and it wasn't very fulfilling. And it was really, really hard for me to meet people. I even ended up getting a part-time job at a place called Fred Siegel's. I don't even know if Fred Siegel's is there anymore, but it was like the place to go shop. And I was just this country girl. And I remember Heather Locklear came in, and I was like, oh my gosh, Heather Locklear, like Melrose Place. I can't believe this. And they had a bunch of perfume because I worked in the makeup department. And I ended up spraying her with room spray instead of perfume. And my manager was mortified. But Heather Locklear was so kind and so sweet and was like laughing at me. And thank God I didn't get fired. But I tried to make friends, and I just couldn't. Everybody seemed like they had their like little clique, and they were happy, and that's where people would just like, they would just stay in these like cliques, and I couldn't break these cliques, and it was so lonely. And I remember, I mean, this is embarrassing, but I don't care, but I was turning 21. I was in Los Angeles, still had my purple convertible Shadow, and I was like, I just want to go have a drink. Like, I'm 21 years old, it's my birthday, I want to go have a drink. And so sometimes I would go to bars and I would go inside of them and I would pretend like a friend stood me up, and I would sit at the bar, and I would just sit there and have a drink. And sometimes people would come up to me because I was this young girl and I was really, cute and dressed nice. And they would say, oh, who are you here with? And I'd say, oh, my girlfriend got into a fight with her boyfriend and she got, she's not showing up. And sometimes that's how I would at least have human contact outside of, the movie sets and Fred Siegel's.
That's hard, but that also gives you the grit. I mean, we all say stories connect us, right? So there's going to be people listening to this really connecting with you because of where you were and then where you are now, and the platform that you have where you're helping so many people continuingly. Because you actually said when you were younger, you always had that kind of that bone, right? That heart that was like, I want to help more people. So, and thank you for sharing that. Cause I know, all of our little scars, right? We they really build us, and they're not always easy, but we kind of can joke about them as we get older, but still at the time it wasn't funny, right? You were lonely, you were missing your family. You didn't want to tell them, how much you were in pain because you wanted to make this work. So did you ever have times where you're like, I'm just throwing it in and I'm going home?
No, because I remember too, when I was in Ohio, everybody was like, oh, you'll be back. You're never going to make it. And that stood in my mind. And I'm like, you know what? As much as like eating the fish at McDonald's sucked and not knowing anybody and flipping a coin to sleep on a mattress, there is no way I'm going to let these people know that I couldn't make it. And so that was really my drive. And it's like one of those things where in life, a lot of times the people that beat you down are the people you want to beat. And, you end up like succeeding because of them.
In spite of them. So what was your moment? Where was the time when then you were like, oh, this opportunity, here it is. This or these are my people, or this is my opportunity. When did things start to turn for you in Los Angeles?
Well, I mean, I don't think it was always like, it was never an easy transition. It seemed like it was always a fight, and that's what I think kept me going too sometimes. So, I'm not proud of this either, but I dated a really, really bad guy and he got into trouble. And it was just like one of those things where I was just naive, and I was just, like I said, I call myself a country girl. I never thought I'd say that, but I was. And I was very naive, and I ended up dating a guy who was a really, really bad guy, and he did very bad things, and I was a part of it. And I was in an abusive relationship for a good amount of time, and he got into a lot of trouble, and he was in such trouble. It was like the FBI, DEA, like US Customs was involved. I had no involvement with this. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and with a person who was very, very mean to me. And so anyways, he ended up getting arrested, and I ended up having to, be a part of a huge court case. And, the law enforcement did help me. And they basically, when they arrested him, they said, we saved your life. And I knew that at that time. And so ironically, right after that, and I feel like this is like a God wink, I was so scared of everything that was going on that I ended up packing my bags again. And instead of moving to Ohio, because I didn't want to put my family at risk if there was a risk. I mean, when you're that young, you just think about these movies and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't go home. I can't do this. I ended up packing my bags again, and I moved to Chicago. And I knew nobody in Chicago again, but that was something I was used to. And so I moved to Chicago, and I'm living in Chicago. because that was a way for me to get away from the law enforcement and get away from just whatever craziness was going on. And I ended up working at retail again. I was barely making ends meet. I remember it was the worst snowstorm. It was 1999. I had a RAV4 at the time because I was coming up in the world, and I bought myself a car, and it was leased, and it was nice. And I remember it got snowed in, and my manager called me. She's like, well, where are you? And I said, well, have you looked outside? Because in Ohio, things close down when it snows. And she's like, oh no, honey, like the snow's not going away. You need to get on the L. And I'm like, what is the L? So I am now riding the L to work. And so it was just crazy. And so then the grandmother who I was very close with, that I would work at the church with, crazy is she was ill for a long time, but she ended up being rushed to the hospital. Like within a week, I got to Chicago. And I couldn't believe, she just called me, and you just kind of know some things. And she just said, I'm not feeling well. And she went to the hospital that evening, and I knew, and I just dropped the phone and I got myself to Ohio, and I held her hand, and she died. So it was amazing, because had I been in LA, I wouldn't have been able to be there for that.
Right.
No,
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like another God wink. So I could start crying. That was like 20 some years ago. So
no,
then,
but when you're close to family that way, though, I mean, like, you know, we had my grandmother, and we were there when she passed, and it is something that you never change from. It does something to your heart, and you, especially when you have that relationship. So, you know, I can feel your love for her.
Right.
And it's beautiful, and she's always with you.
And I mean, and what a gift to be able to be so close, to be able to get there for that moment, you know?
Right.
And so, and then I get a phone call from my apartment manager, who was part of the investigation, who I became friends with, and the next door neighbor, who was part of the investigation that I became friends with. And they said, you know what, we really miss you. We felt sorry for you. Everybody knew what was going on, and we want you to come visit LA. And my neighbor had some money, and he's like, I'll buy you a plane ticket. Just come out, and just, you know, nobody will know you're here. And I went to LA, and I stayed with my apartment manager, who was stealing our trash and giving it to the FBI at the time. Like, it was just so funny to think that now these people were like, you know, they were doing something for the law enforcement, but they also felt sorry for me, and they knew what I was going through, and they reached out to me. And so she said, I have a job at the Playboy Mansion. Would you want to do the makeup there? It'll pay you like $500, and, you know, you could have a job. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need the money, and that's like a good amount of money quickly. So I went to the Playboy Mansion, and I didn't know what to expect. And it was in honor of Kylie Bax, who was a supermodel. And it was this party, and I had to get these girls ready, and I was like the assistant. And so basically I got the girls ready, and I was with another makeup artist, and I brought some lingerie because I heard that, you know, they wear lingerie there at the parties and whatever. And so we were told by the staff that, and security, that we could not attend the party if we worked there. And so I thought, you know what? I've already been in trouble. Like, I'm never coming back here. I'm going to this party. So
Good
the
for
makeup
you.
artist, the makeup artist and I, we put on our lingerie. We walked down, and it was like being caught in your underwear. And my lingerie wasn't like real lingerie. It was like a really pretty, like, red bathing suit top. And it was Valentine's Day. So it was like kind of like, and I had this beautiful sarong. And I walked down, excuse me, and it was like being caught in my underwear. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, like everybody was in jeans and a t-shirt. You know how the models rolled back then. And so BBC was there. They thought I was like this Valentine's Day surprise. Everybody was like, what is going on? And I was like, oh my gosh. And so Hugh Hefner calls me over to his table, and he says, who are you? And I had had a couple of drinks, and I said, who are you? And he just started laughing. he was just so funny. And so I just thought at that moment I was going to be thrown out by the man himself. And then I thought, oh, I was going to be on Current Affair and E and all this stuff. Like I got thrown out of this party. And so then basically security said, we would like your phone number. And they took my phone number, and his daughter got in touch with me a couple weeks later and said, we want you to test to be a Playboy Playmate.
How crazy is that? Go ahead, Cynthia.
Can I just say, that was the Youngstown coming out of you?
Yes,
That who are you? That who are you is totally something that anybody from Youngstown would crack up that you said that, because that's in you, few drinks or not. That is so funny. So you said, who are you? And he just had to die laughing. And you created this opportunity for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Just wild. So fun. So
but
go ahead.
it was a God wink again, because at that time, Nicole Brown Simpson had passed away, and I was in an abusive relationship. And so I remember I had instant money and instant friends. And I also had, I had protection. And then it was like, I was in a situation where I don't want to say I was untouchable, but back then a little bit of fame carried you a long way. And so I couldn't really be harassed by certain people anymore, because Hef was going to protect me and the Playboy family. And they knew the situation, and they knew they were going to protect me.
Right, which is amazing. And as you said, it's another God wink, but it also shows your grit, right? You're like, no, I'm here. I'm going to work. I'm going to, I'm going to put my mark down. What do I have to lose? And I think a lot of people sometimes pass those opportunities up because of fear, and they don't do those kind of ballsy things. And if you have to do ballsy things in life to really get ahead. I mean, and it's true. You have to, have confidence in yourself that like, okay, I'm going to do this and go out. So I love that you shared that. Cynthia, did you want to add something?
No, I think that's true. I mean, it's one thing you create the opportunity, but then you follow through with work, with hard work, and then also finding ways to use it as a positive platform too. So you're not just talking about, oh, here I have fame. You're like, I have a platform, and I can talk about domestic abuse. I can talk about the things that I, experience to help others. So it all works really well together.
Yeah, and the Playboy family, I mean, we did so much charity work. That was like 80% of my jobs. And, your centerfold comes out once. And, unfortunately, the internet was part of my centerfold. So there was a lot more than 6 pictures in a magazine, like most of the girls, which I didn't really think about at the time. But, for me too, it was like the Youngstown came out in me, where a lot of these girls didn't want to work. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much money. I get to fly around the world. They pay a per diem. I'm at the best hotels. And it was like, I went to Santa Monica College for a short bit, but I never had that college life. And I was like literally in a sorority traveling the world. I went as far as Bali, Indonesia. I mean, who could say they've done the things I've done and been the place I've been? I've seen every city. I had a blast, roped off. You always had security. I mean, It was awesome.
That's amazing. So I do now. I love that. And I love how it's set up, but I love how, where your life was, and then where it went, and then where it continued to go. So like, when did you and Adam meet?
So Adam and I basically met in Las Vegas, which who would think that you would meet somebody there? And I was in Las Vegas, again, heartbroken. I didn't date very many men, but I had to kiss a lot of frogs. And this guy just really broke my heart. And I just couldn't believe that, what was happening, that I just couldn't find somebody that was good and kind and loyal. And I was at Nine Steakhouse in the Palms, and again, Playboy had a really great relationship there with the Maloof brothers. We had the Playboy Club. I was on a Playboy slot machine. It was like really cool. So fun. I was eating at the Nine Steakhouse. It was March Madness. I had no idea what March Madness was. I'm not really a sports girl. I hardly know anything about football. And I'm there at the Nine Steakhouse having dinner with a girlfriend. And I didn't even want to meet a guy. I was just there with my girlfriend. We were just having a couple of drinks. I promised her I would go there. And there were guys everywhere. That is the last place you want to be to mend a broken heart and hang out with a girlfriend. So we were having guys come up to us left and right. And so basically, I guess Adam was with a bunch of his friends, and they were all football players. And he sent over he sent over the waitress to me, and she said, "These football players want to meet you." And I thought, oh my gosh, like that is so bad. That is so cheesy, so embarrassing. So I said, if they want to meet us, I'm not going over there. He has to come over here. And so she went back over to him and she said, stand in line. And I did not say that. So it was not like working. It looked really bad from the very beginning. And then this really sweet busboy, and his name is Jose, I would frequent the Palms often, and Adam would as well. It's very popular back then. And he said, Jennifer, you're a really nice girl, and Adam is a really nice guy, and I think you guys should meet. And he took me over. And we met.
Oh, I love that.
And yeah, we had the best time. It was truly, truly love at first sight. And we were together because I didn't have anybody in my life and he didn't have anybody in his life. We were there from that moment on. I remember him calling his agent the next day, and he's just like, this girl's got me acting up, like I'm missing my flight, I'm not coming back. And the agent's like, his name was Gary, he was like, keep your head on straight, like stop this, you're in Las Vegas. And he flew home to LA with me, and he stayed with me in LA because he saw a doctor there that he really liked, a holistic doctor. And then I left for Miami because I had a job, and I told him, here's the keys to my place, lock up when you leave, and that's it. So then basically I didn't know really too much about him, which is strange, right? I mean, I thought he was the financial advisor. I didn't even know he was a football player. There wasn't really Google back then. You just didn't do that kind of thing. I just knew he was good looking. I thought he was great. I was hoping he was the agent or the financial advisor because I did not want to date an athlete. And I end up taking off to Miami. I find out my grandfather passed away, who I was very close with again. And I end up taking a flight to Ohio to be there with my family. And then Adam and I are talking on the phone. We had Nextel at the time. So I think we were like, always like doing the bad texting on Nextel and like doing the radio calling or whatever you'd call it. And he basically said, I really want to see you. And I thought, well, I've been here for my family. I've done everything I can. I don't want too much time to pass because you don't want the sizzle to go away. And I took a plane right from Ohio to Arizona, and I had no idea.
The busboy. That was I got to know you guys, and you're both good people. And it also probably, as you said, you weren't in the best relationships. And to have this person that, got to know you over the years or, over the time, be like, no, he's a good guy too. Probably was just like really nice that you knew someone was also looking out for you, right? You had, the Playboy behind you also, but now you have this other person that's kind of like, no, I just want to make, I got your back.
Yeah. And at that point in my life, I was really established. I had a house that I purchased at 7 years old. I had, really nice car. I did really nice things. I mean, I literally went from rags to riches. I left a small part out, but I even lived in the gates of Bel Air. I rented a house there, but I literally went from Hollywood, where I was driving the Dodge Shadow, through the gates of Bel Air at one point, by living by Adam Sandler. I mean, my life is nothing but a Cinderella story,
but also the thing is
that you created,
but also what you still are doing. And, I know that, we're not going to keep you on for an hour and a half, but we have so much that we could actually talk about. But the fact that in the entire time you were giving back, it wasn't like you lived rags to riches and then we're like, okay, see y'all. You continued with that service heart. And I say this to Cynthia all the time, and I know she's going to chuckle, but like, I really do think, whether you believe in God or the universe, I believe in God, but I do think that God puts certain people together that can make bigger impacts on the world. And every time I talk to an NFL spouse or anyone in the NFL community, I'm always blown away by the service heart. And it makes me so proud to be a part of this and to tell these stories, because these are the stories that people don't hear, right? They don't hear all the good stuff that happens behind the scenes. And the fact that, you, as you said, you went from where you lived, you still had a close family, you were there for your grandparents and your family. And as you were building yourself up, as you were, healing yourself through abuse and all the stuff that you went, but you never forgot about the little man. You never forgot about the people that still needed you. And I think that's beautiful and just shows the kind of heart that you have.
Exactly.
Well, I feel like I don't regret anything in my life, and I feel like too the bad stuff brought me to the good stuff. And it's like you have to see the dark in order to see the light. And I would take the dark stuff any day to get me where I am. And I feel like all of those taught me and made me who I am. And even like with the Playboy stuff, I wasn't the prettiest, I wasn't the tallest, I wasn't the skinniest, but I had work ethic. And so I worked all the time, and I was able to buy the house, and I was able to do all that stuff on my own and get that independence because of my work ethic, And so to me, that's everything, growing up in Youngstown, Ohio.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
beautiful. So can you tell, go ahead, Cynthia.
Yeah, so I love the idea. So now here you are, you talked about you have this sorority of friendships with, the Playboy Mansion and all the girls that are working alongside of you. And then you're going to head into a whole new kind of like sisterhood with the NFL women. And I feel like, you're pretty much breaking stereotypes wherever you go, because now not only are you introducing the NFL women to the idea of somebody who is with the Playboy Mansion, is with Hugh, is with the girls, and they're saying, "Wow, she's has so much beautiful depth. She's not what I thought they might be," which is what a lot of people say about NFL women, that they don't realize the depth that they have. So, tell me how that transitioned for you, and how it was for you coming into the league.
I didn't have a really easy time coming into the league. There were a lot of people that were I was judged a lot, and it wasn't really easy for me, but I did find those few people that really supported me and looked past what they read or heard and things like that. And it ended up being really awesome, and those friendships are still there now. But Adam and I weren't married at the time. I was doing the Howard Stern show, and there was a lot of chatter, and so it wasn't easy, I don't think. But now that I'm around these women, and recently being at the Super Bowl and things like that, I wish that maybe it was even me, maybe I'm at fault too. Maybe I had up my guard. Maybe I was insecure that they were judging me when they weren't. But, I feel like it's like anything in life. It's just like, you got to find those few people. And then once you break that barrier and they get to know you, then sometimes they open it up to other people. And that's what kind of happened with me.
Beautiful.
But it was hard. It was
They're probably very like you, they're probably just like you, that they can see past something and see where you're getting and what you're doing with that platform and who you are,
Yeah.
and so many times we talk to NFL women and they say, I wish that I could go back to my rookie year and say, hi, I know I'm wearing, like this, and I'm just out of college, but, this is who I am, and not be so shy and so backwards and so fearful that, you're being judged. Because I think we all kind of do that. I did the same thing when we were in New York. They were NFL wives, and I was just like, what am I doing here? So then you meet them and you're like, what the heck? I wish I could have done that all over again. So I appreciate you saying that. But I'm glad you found your people right off the bat, though. I'm glad you found your circle. Those are the kind of people you want to be with anyways, the ones that are non-judgmental from the start.
Yeah, and that circle is still there, crazy as it may seem. And Adam and I were going through hard times too within the league, because he was having a hard time. He had a career-ending concussion that his career should have just ended, and he continued on. And so the news was there was constantly stuff about like him, about not doing his job and things like that. And so not only were people probably like, oh gosh, who's this girl? Then they were like, now we've got this player that can't perform. And so there was a lot of like, there was a lot of like just, I think,
Stress.
anger, and there was like hurt, and and I was always like, like I said, I don't hardly know anything about football, but I was always like, this is a team effort. Why are you always on the newspaper and it's just you that you're not doing your job? Aren't you on a team? And it used to anger me. And I always told him, you should just sit on the bench. You're hurt. You shouldn't, somebody will take my job. I can't sit on the bench. And he'd play through the pain. And I felt like that's when they write about you, when you're playing through the pain and they don't know you're in pain. And so I think too, a lot of the times maybe, people didn't let me in their inner circle because of what Adam was going through.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah,
Very
there's so many layers to it, and that's bringing light. And we talk about this all the time on especially on the show, is when someone is leaving the league or hurt, like why does the news have to bash them even more? Like why don't we say, this is a person. This is not just a football player. This is not something. This is a God's given gift this person got. Let's give them slack. Let's give the family slack when they're going through the leaving the league. Let's support them there. Let's talk about it. Let's be there. I think it breaks my heart because it's in so many different things, talking to professional athletes. And then you're just like, after they leave the league, it's like, okay, who's getting their number? It's not like, what is that person going through? Like, this is something that they played their entire life. This is their passion. This is what they loved. And all of a sudden it's taken away.
Right.
Let's put feelings to that and not just like move on. Like that makes me actually so angry, because I think it does, and if someone doesn't have the support, if they don't have the support of a spouse or a girlfriend, and they're there by themselves, and a player's just going through their feelings in themselves, that's when dark times happen, and it shouldn't, because they should be uplifted and supported, and then also praised. Thank you for doing what you did. And I know, people will say, well, it's not not fighting for the country. Yeah. But every person watches, most people watch these games, and they, it's just one of those things that needs to be, light needs to be brought into it. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a time Adam couldn't tie his cleats because, his back, he had herniated discs. Like, nobody knows that. He'd ask players to tie his shoes, So there's so much that goes into it, and they are human beings. And, it makes me really sad that a lot of times, like you said, it's just like, okay, well, who's up next,
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, really does.
Yeah, it's just a quick circle. And that's why I love having these conversations, because I hope always that the current spouses and players are listening or hear about it somehow, because as you're like, as you're a rookie and you're making it, then all of a sudden there's this awesome turn where you sign a great contract, the best contract of your career, and then starts to swing down. And that's when, your neighbors are like, don't listen to what they say about you on the radio.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute, what are they saying on the radio? And then you're like, okay, it's time to go. Everybody wants you to go. Everybody wants you to leave. And they can't wait for the next person to come in. And you are a person, and you are a family, and you've committed to the community. You've given your time, you've donated your time. And that's when you take it personally. But when you hear the other women tell the story, you realize, no, it's a business. And that part of it is the business. So you have to just kind of like keep your relationships smart and strong within the league, and friendships outside of the league, so that, when that is time to go, you still have those people that value you for who you are, not what you did for a while.
Yeah. And rely on, Adam, many times the pastors on the team was his support system. And they do have a good support system when you need it, if you can ask for it, if they know you're going through it. But that's the problem. These guys, they're men. They're like these egotistical. They're these football players. They don't want to ask for help unless somebody really sees you hurting.
And that's so true. That's so true. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. And I do want to because I know I want to talk about Childhelp and what you're doing and how you got involved in the charity, and then the event that's happening in April.
Yes. So I've been a part of this charity since 2014. I got involved from a friend, Tiffany Quell, and she said, "Can you help me get local athletes to walk on the show?" And so I was like, oh my gosh, this woman is crazy. I just had a baby. I have 3 kids. My husband travels. And so I just thought she was crazy. But then I thought I could make the time and I could do this. And I did. And I continued to work for them, as a volunteer for many years, just doing the fashion show. And my kids walked every year. And it raises a lot of money. It's for abused children. Sarah and Yvonne have an awesome story. They were in Tokyo. There was a typhoon. And basically, these kids were orphanages, or they were orphans. And she took 11 of them back to the US. Of course, they got clearance and things like that. But, they were considered throwaway. And they started this amazing organization that help abused children. 1 in 5 kids a day die from child abuse. And if you ever went to their center, which if you ladies ever come, I'd love to take you to the center. What's amazing is when I was younger, I was sexually assaulted. And so I remember in Ohio, we didn't have a place where, you went to the police station and then you told your story. And then you went to the hospital and you told your story. And your story changes as a young child. And people also tell you what your story should be, right? So what I love about Childhelp is you tell your story one time at the center, and they have children advocates there that are like used to working with children. So you're not dealing with a homicide detective. You're dealing with somebody who can deal with a child, a psychologist that could deal with a child. And Phoenix Children Hospital is there, and obviously they work with children. So you're telling your story one time, they get the story, which is most important, and then that child gets what they need. And it's so amazing. And we raise a lot of money, and there's a lot of involvement too. I have a 15-year-old son. He's able to do things and give back through them because they have the Wings program. And it's really amazing. So this is my 3rd year chairing, which is like kind of crazy because who chairs 3 times? But
you do.
Me and my friend Jamie Levine, she's doing it for the 2nd year. We're going to put on this circus theme fashion show this year. We're going to have a lot of local celebrities and athletes walk in it, and plan on making a lot of money and helping a lot of kids out. And it's just a really, really great cause. And I think with the pandemic and just financially where a lot of people are, we don't realize how bad things are. And I also work as a CASA, so I'm a court-appointed special advocate for foster kids. And we now have kids in group homes that are 6 years old. And people just don't understand that a lot of times the abuse happens within, a home that you're in a group home with 16, 17-year-old kids now. And so we are just in a really bad place as far as just taking care of our kids. And I will do everything and anything to help. And, Childhelp is one of the great ones that they do everything they can. And we have a hotline now too for athletes. There's a lot of, internal stuff that goes on where, as an athlete, sometimes you don't feel like you could speak up because maybe you're afraid, you won't get into the college and the recruits and things like that because you have this situation going on in your high school or college. So we even have a hotline for the athletes now where, we have all these different numbers you can call for everybody.
That's great. And tell us when is the event?
So it's April 16th, and it's a luncheon, and it's 11 to 2, and it's on a Sunday. And like I said, it's circus theme. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have clowns walking on stilts. I don't know about the clowns. They said clowns are scary, but we're going to have this whole circus theme with cotton candy and popcorn. And I have a TDI dog. He's walking in the show. And we're going to just have a really great time. It's going to be awesome.
That's great. Are you all set with all the players that are modeling and their wives and kids and local? Are you all set with that? Or do you have a registration form that you'll accept models still?
Yes, I mean, we're still looking for models. I like to switch it up every year. I reached out to Erica. I know a lot of people are busy and there's like been some spring breaks and stuff like that. So I'm hoping for at least 3 or 4 more families. And we love to showcase
great.
the whole family. And we dress
Nice.
you. We make it really easy, and they'll do hair and makeup if you want. And it's really easy, and it's for a
Oh,
great price.
good.
Yeah.
I have a couple great families out there in Arizona that I would love to tell about that were former players and beautiful families. So I'll definitely make sure that I share the registration form on Thread and through social and share it with the girls at Off the Field, to get the word out there. And then, of course, you're selling tickets to come. Do you register to come to the event as well? Is there a cutoff, or is it how many
Nope,
can come?
we're selling. It'll close out once we sold all our tickets, but we got a late start because of Super Bowl, so we still have plenty of seats and tables to be sold, and hopefully I can put that in my bio where you can buy the tickets if that's okay.
Nice.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
This
and
is
so
great.
yeah.
Yeah, and where can, because I
Beautiful.
know we have Childhelp right here where it's the Instagram, and you can also find Jennifer_Archuleta. But where is there another place that they can go as like a website for registration, or should they just go to your Instagram and they can find everything there?
Yeah, I'll put it on my Instagram, but it's just childhelp.org, and it's the Arizona Wings chapter.
Nice.
That's
But I'll
Beautiful. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing that you're doing. And with your history and your own experiences, and, what a voice you bring and what an important cause to you. So, there's such value in it for families, for children, for anybody that is in a situation like that. So, wow, it's amazing what you're doing, really and truly.
Yeah, it
Thank
really
you.
is.
I mean, I love it too. I mean, I meet so many great people every day, and then you just, you can touch somebody and then they touch you, and then so many people want to get involved, once they
Hmm.
hear what it's about and things like that. So I'm
Right.
hoping more people will come and get involved.
That's
Beautiful.
amazing. And you just
Excellent.
did something, didn't you do something? There was because this is it's not, there's local chapters, but it is a national organization. And you just did
Yes.
something where when you were skiing, right? Didn't you? Wasn't there an event or something? Or was
No,
that?
but I posted last year's event so people could see. We did
Oh,
Alice in
perfect.
Wonderland. It was
Yes.
super
Oh, that's
cute.
what I
And so
saw.
I
Oh,
just want
fun.
to do like a sizzle reel, like, hey, now it's a circus.
Time
Yeah,
to
no, that's
go.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, good for
Yeah.
you. Well, great. We'll definitely be promoting this and what you're doing, and definitely pulling out some great clips and quotes from today to share your incredible message and journey. And I'm sure somebody was listening that was very inspired by all of your actions and your grit and, your ethic. So good for you. It was a great
Aw,
show.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
ladies.
Thank you, Jennifer, so much for joining. And again, you guys, you can find Jennifer_Archuleta. You can also go to Childhelp. You can also go to childhelp.org, and it's the Arizona Wing program. Is that correct? Right? Did I get that right? Wings, Arizona Wings. And I mean, these are the kind of stories that we want you guys to really sit with, right? You're going to hear this. This is going to go out on all the podcast players next week. It's one of those things. Think about who's in your world. Think about who's in your life that needs to hear this story. Someone needs to hear this story because they're maybe in a hard time. Maybe they're in an abusive relationship. Maybe they're in a crossroads in their life where they're, sleeping on that mattress, because they won that coin toss. But they're like, what does my life look like? Where am I? What am I doing? You have to
Right.
think about the people's stories and what's going on behind the scenes, and everyone just has to be a little bit kinder to, to all, each of us. So Jennifer, thank you again so much for joining
Right.
YNS Live here on
Right.
with NFL Thread on Fireside. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for
Yes,
having me.
indeed. Thank you. What a pleasure.
Bye, ladies.
Yes, bye.
Youngstown
Thank you so
proud.
much. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.